She stood in the hallway with her head slightly lowered, arms crossed over her chest, trying to shrink into herself. The sounds of lockers slamming shut and hurried footsteps echoed around her, but her ears were still ringing with the sharp words her teacher had just thrown her way. "That outfit is completely inappropriate for school," the woman had snapped, frowning as if the girl had committed a crime. Students nearby had turned to look. A few snickered. Others whispered. But no one defended her. Not even the ones who knew exactly why she wore what she wore that day and what it meant. And that right there, that's the moment everything changed.
Hey you.
Yeah, you. The one who clicked on this video because you saw that thumbnail and thought, wait, what did she show the teacher? You're about to find out. But before we dive into what happened in that hallway, and trust me, what comes next is something you won't see coming. Let me ask you something. Have you ever been judged based on something as small as your clothes? Have you ever walked into a room and felt like everyone had already decided who you were before you even said a word? If you've ever felt misunderstood, out of place, or underestimated, then this story is yours, too. It's not just about a dress code or a teacher with outdated rules. It's about courage, silence breaking into power, and one young girl's decision to stand up for herself without ever saying a word. And in the next few minutes, you're going to witness a twist that not only silenced an entire school, but also sent a message that still ripples through social media today. Now listen, I know how easy it is to skip around or click out.
There's so much noise online.
But I promise you, the reason you clicked is the reason you need to stay. Because the answer you're looking for? It's coming. The moment she reveals what she's carrying in her hand, the moment that flips the entire story upside down, it's not just satisfying. It's powerful. You're going to feel it. You're going to remember it. And if you stay with me until the end, you'll see exactly how one moment of quiet defiance turned into a viral movement, one that even major news outlets had to cover. Let's start from the beginning, though. Her name is Mia Torres. She's 15, a sophomore at a public high school in a quiet Midwest town, one of those places where everybody knows everybody, where the school board still prints outdated dress codes on crumpled sheets of paper that haven't changed since 1997, and where people smile at you in church, but side-eye you at the grocery store. Mia's not a troublemaker. Far from it. She's an athlete, a focused, disciplined one at that. A gymnast, to be specific. And not just any gymnast. She's been training since she was 6, giving up summer vacations, birthday parties, and weekend sleepovers to spend hours in a gym flipping across balance beams and pushing her body beyond its limits. But to her, it wasn't sacrifice. It was passion. It was purpose. And just 3 days before that hallway moment, she competed in one of the toughest regional championships of her life. She walked into school that morning with her hair still a little damp from an early morning conditioning session. Her outfit? A sleek, zip-up jacket with her team logo and tight compression leggings, the kind all serious athletes wear before or after meet. She wasn't trying to be flashy. She wasn't trying to break rules. She was exhausted and proud of what she had just accomplished. Because the thing is, Mia didn't just compete. She won. Out of over 100 elite athletes, she had taken first place in the all-around category, a title most girls in her district only dreamed of. And in her bag that day, hidden under a stack of notebooks and a half-eaten granola bar, was a gold medal, still polished and glinting in the morning light. But no one at school knew.
Not yet.
So when her homeroom teacher, Mrs. Crawford, pulled her aside between classes and launched into a scolding about tight leggings being a distraction, she didn't realize she was talking to a champion.
She didn't ask.
She didn't listen. She just judged, based on what she saw in front of her, not knowing the journey behind it. And what made it worse? Mrs. Crawford made sure to do it loud enough for everyone else to hear. She didn't whisper. She didn't pull Mia aside privately. She made a performance out of it, the kind of public humiliation that sticks to your skin long after the moment has passed. Now here's where it gets interesting. Mia could have walked away. She could have taken the warning slip, zipped up her jacket higher, and shrunk like so many students before her who've been called out for wearing too much or too little. Because let's be real, the rules never make sense anyway. But she didn't. Instead, she reached into her bag, pulled out the medal, and without saying a word, placed it gently on the desk in front of her teacher. A simple act. No anger. No sarcasm. Just truth. And in that moment, the room went completely still. But what happened after that? That's where everything turns. Because the medal? It wasn't just a symbol of athletic success. It was a spark. The next few hours would unleash a chain reaction none of them saw coming. Not the teachers, not the principal, not even Mia herself. Students began whispering, then recording, then posting. The story spread faster than wildfire. TikTok, YouTube, Reddit, Twitter, all of it. And before the day was over, people across the country were talking about the girl who shut down her school with a medal. Now you're probably wondering, what was on that medal? Where exactly had she competed? What did the school do when they found out the truth? And did the teacher ever apologize? All great questions. And we're going to get to every single one of them. But here's what I want you to understand first. This story is not just about clothing. It's about perception. It's about the quiet battles that happen every single day in hallways and classrooms and offices. Battles where someone gets labeled, dismissed, or silenced before they even get a chance to speak. You clicked on this video because something inside you wanted to see that moment, the moment where the underdog wins. And I promise you, that moment is coming. But the road there? It's even more powerful than the twist itself. Because this isn't fiction. This happened. And what you're about to hear will make you rethink the way you look at others, and maybe even the way you look at yourself. So don't go anywhere. Because in the next part of the story, a student council member makes a bold move, a local reporter gets wind of what's happening, and someone high up in the school board is forced to step in. But before all that happens, something even more unexpected takes place, something that Mia never planned, and something that changed the way the entire school viewed not just her, but every student who had ever been judged unfairly. And that moment? That's what's coming next. As the hallway fell silent and that glimmering gold medal sat defiantly on the teacher's desk, a ripple of disbelief ran through the nearby students like a current. Mrs. Crawford, who just moments earlier stood rigid with authority, now faltered, her eyes darting from the medal to Mia's calm expression, searching for something to regain control. But it was already too late. The narrative had shifted. What began as a routine morning at Millstone High had instantly transformed into something much larger, and while no one knew it yet, the events unfolding that day would expose more than just a misjudgment. It would lift the veil on a deeper, long-standing tension simmering beneath the school's polished surface. To understand how Mia ended up at the center of such a powerful, emotional standoff, you have to step back and look at the weeks leading up to it. Mia wasn't just a name on the morning attendance sheet. She was a powerhouse in the world of competitive gymnastics, known in the local athletic community for her sheer discipline, quiet strength, and razor-sharp focus. But in school, she flew under the radar. She was never part of the popular crowd, never the kind of student who vied for attention or courted approval. Her small circle of friends included a few other athletes, like Jasmine, her track-running best friend who knew the exact calorie count of every protein bar in existence, and Daniel, a shy science whiz who had once helped her build a custom springboard for home practice. These weren't loud kids. They didn't post TikToks for clout or chase trends for likes. They worked hard, supported one another, and stayed out of drama. But that didn't mean they were immune to it. Mia's rigorous training schedule left little room for parties or social events. Her weekdays were spent juggling homework and hours at the gym, with weekends often booked for out-of-state competitions. It wasn't unusual for her to show up to school Monday morning with faint bruises on her arms or blisters on her hands, the physical price of relentless practice. Still, most teachers never asked, never noticed. Except for one, Coach Simmons, the aging PE teacher who had once coached state champions decades ago. He admired Mia's work ethic, but warned her to be careful around faculty like Mrs. Crawford, who had little patience for rule-bending athletes. It sounded strange at the time, but now, in the light of what had just happened, his words felt like a buried warning finally surfacing. And the medal? It wasn't just any win. It came from the Tri-State Elite Invitational, a notoriously difficult meet where scouts from Olympic prep teams often lingered in the back rows, quietly taking notes. Mia hadn't told many people she was competing, partly because she didn't want to jinx it, and partly because she didn't think anyone at school would care. But when she nailed her beam routine with a score that shattered her personal best and later vaulted to a nearly perfect 10, she walked off that mat knowing something in her life had just shifted. The medal she won wasn't just a trophy, it was a gateway to something bigger. She was officially being considered for a national training camp. But all that potential was invisible to someone like Mrs. Crawford, who saw only what her narrow lens allowed, an outfit she didn't approve of and a girl who didn't apologize for wearing it. What made this story more complicated and more unsettling was the sudden reaction from the student body. Within minutes of the confrontation, someone had snapped a photo of Mia's silent protest, her standing tall, the medal resting on the desk, the teacher visibly stunned. That image hit Instagram, then Snapchat, then TikTok. By the time lunch rolled around, even students in other grades who didn't know Mia personally were whispering about the gymnast who shut down dress code politics. But what started as a quiet buzz soon evolved into something with sharper edges. Rumors began to swirl, and not all of them were supportive. Some students speculated that Mia had orchestrated the whole thing as a stunt for attention, an accusation that stung, especially because it couldn't have been further from the truth. Others wondered if she had purposely worn that outfit to provoke the teacher, despite the fact that several girls on the cheer team wore similar athletic gear daily, without a word from staff. A few even questioned whether the medal was real. Someone posted a screenshot of a different gymnast wearing a similar medal and claimed Mia might have bought it online. The conspiracy grew fast and loud, and just like that, the line between truth and rumor began to blur. What nobody knew was that a few teachers had been quietly documenting students they viewed as non-compliant with dress standards for months, keeping informal logs and noting patterns. Mrs. Crawford's name was at the top of the list. And it didn't stop there. One of Mia's classmates, Kayla, popular, vocal, and always dressed to the nines, had recently confided in Jasmine that she'd been pulled into the principal's office 3 times that semester alone over her wardrobe choices. But unlike Mia, Kayla had a father on the school board, and each complaint was quietly dropped. That double standard started to raise eyebrows, and not just among students. Even faculty members were beginning to grow uncomfortable with how inconsistently the rules were enforced. Yet still, no one had spoken out. Until now. But here's the twist, and pay close attention because this is where things start to get murky. That same morning, an anonymous tip was sent to the school's administration email account. The message claimed that certain students, including athletes, were being allowed to flaunt inappropriate attire under the guise of performance wear, and it specifically mentioned Mia's name. The message was unsigned. The tone was aggressive. And the timing? Suspiciously perfect. Because what are the odds that the very day Mia finally brought her championship medal to school, she also happened to get singled out in front of everyone? Jasmine, ever the skeptical one, immediately suspected foul play. She believed someone had it out for Mia, someone who either felt threatened by her success or held a grudge strong enough to try and tear her down. She started combing through social media posts, screenshots, anything she could find that might reveal who was behind the email. Meanwhile, Daniel, digging in his own way, began compiling a spreadsheet of every dress code violation reported in the last 6 months. What he found was troubling. Over 85% of the violations were against female students, and almost all of them were athletes, students of color, or part of non-mainstream clubs. The pattern was impossible to ignore. And yet, through all of this swirling chaos, Mia remained remarkably silent. Not because she was weak or uncertain, but because she understood something most people her age hadn't yet grasped. Sometimes, the most powerful statements don't require words at all. She let the medal speak.
And it did.
But the forces swirling around her weren't about to go quiet. There were whispers that a faculty member had leaked Mia's competition schedule to Crawford earlier that week. There were questions about why the administration hadn't immediately responded to the photo that now had over 100,000 views online. And most puzzling of all, Someone had been quietly deleting certain comments from the school's official social media pages, comments supporting Mia, praising her for standing up, and calling out the hypocrisy of the dress code enforcement. Someone was trying to control the narrative. So now the question wasn't just about a dress code anymore. It was about power. Who had it, who wanted to keep it, and who was willing to manipulate a teenager's hard-earned success just to preserve their control. And just when it seemed like the mystery couldn't get any deeper, something else happened. Late that night, after the incident, Jasmine received a DM from a burner account. The message was just one sentence long. "You don't know the full story about Mia. Be careful who you trust." What does that mean? Who's really behind the email? Was it a student jealous of Mia's rise, or was someone inside the faculty working to discredit her for reasons still unknown? And most chilling of all, what exactly was meant by "you don't know the full story"? Stay with me, because the next part of this story reveals what Mia has been hiding, and once you see it, everything you thought you knew will change. The next morning, the buzz hadn't died down. It had spread like wildfire. TikTok videos dissected every frame of the now viral image. Instagram pages that typically posted about high school football scores were suddenly sharing stories of dress code discrimination, tagging Millstone High and demanding answers. Students showed up in outfits mimicking Mia's training gear in a silent wave of protest. What had started as a private moment between a student and a teacher had become a full-blown social media movement, and yet, the girl at the center of it all remained surprisingly quiet. Not because she didn't have anything to say, but because something wasn't sitting right. Something deeper. And soon, she'd realized just how complicated things were about to get. By the time Mia got to school that day, the medal was gone. She'd left it locked in her gym locker overnight, tucked inside her practice bag. But when she unzipped the compartment that morning, it was empty. No ribbon. No case. Nothing. Her stomach dropped. She checked the other pockets, even the ones she never used. Then she checked the floor. Then she asked Coach Simmons if anyone had been in the gym early. He shook his head but looked uneasy, like he knew something he didn't want to say. That medal wasn't just a token of her hard work. It was her proof. The very thing that had turned the confrontation into a statement was now missing, and without it, she had nothing tangible to push back against the rumors claiming she'd faked the whole story. Her heart pounded. Had someone broken into her locker? Had a student taken it? Or worse, had a staff member removed it on purpose? Jasmine, now on high alert, didn't buy the idea of random theft. She'd already been suspicious of the burner message warning her to stop digging. Now, with the medal gone, she was sure this was a cover-up. She pulled Mia aside between classes and told her something she hadn't shared before. The day after Mia's medal went viral, Jasmine had been in the library, printing out her science fair paper. While waiting for the printer, she noticed Mrs. Crawford across the room in a private conversation with Mr. Bell, the vice principal. Their voices were low, but she caught fragments of their conversation, contained the fallout, not our image, and most unsettling of all, she's not the only one. Jasmine didn't know who they were talking about, but after the medal disappeared, those words echoed in her mind like a warning shot. Meanwhile, Daniel, working quietly in the background, had made some strange discoveries of his own. Several of the school's older computers, the ones used to log disciplinary reports, had recently been wiped. He had screenshots from just 2 days prior showing at least 4 violations logged under Mrs. Crawford's name, but now those records were missing from the official system. He didn't have admin access to prove they were deleted, but the timing was too convenient. It was starting to look like someone was scrubbing evidence.
But why?
Why go to these lengths over a student's outfit and a medal? Then came the unexpected turn. Mia's mother, who had always supported her athletic dreams but rarely got involved in school politics, received an anonymous letter in the mail. It was printed, not handwritten, and postmarked from their own town. No return address. It read, "You don't know what your daughter's been a part of. Ask her about the 2022 summer camp." Her mom showed Mia the letter without accusing her of anything, but the concern in her eyes was impossible to miss. And here's the thing, there was something about that camp. Mia had gone to a high-performance training camp 2 summers ago, the kind of place where elite gymnasts were pushed to their limits. The coaches were strict. Some rules felt off. And there had been one incident, a girl named Avery who was quietly sent home in the middle of the week. No explanation, no goodbyes. Just gone. At the time, Mia hadn't asked questions. Everyone whispered about Avery breaking a rule, but nobody really knew. Now, though, her mind raced with possibilities. What if that letter wasn't just meant to scare her mother, but to rattle Mia into silence? Was someone trying to remind her of a time she didn't want to revisit? And more importantly, was that event somehow connected to what was happening now? That night, as Mia sat in her room trying to process everything, the missing medal, the altered records, the cryptic letter, she received a message from a classmate she hadn't spoken to in months. His name was Trevor. A quiet kid who mostly kept to himself, Trevor had once been in Mia's freshman gym class. He claimed to know something about the email that had targeted her, but he wouldn't say it over text. "Meet me tomorrow after school, behind the auditorium. And come alone," he wrote. She stared at the screen, unsure whether to trust him. Trevor had never been cruel, but he'd always struck her as guarded, maybe even paranoid. Still, something told her this was her only shot to get answers. What she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that Trevor had access to something far more dangerous than a rumor or a deleted file. He had a copy of a video, one taken a week before, on a school security camera. A video that showed who really entered the gym locker room the night the medal disappeared. But Trevor wasn't sure if handing it over would help Mia or make her the next target. And as she turned out her bedroom light that night, trying to prepare for what the next day might bring, her phone buzzed one more time. A new message. No name. No number. Just 6 chilling words. "Stop now, or you'll regret it." The next day, the air at Millstone High felt different, thicker, like everyone was holding their breath. Word had gotten around that Mia might be onto something bigger than just a dress code violation. Even those who hadn't cared at first were now leaning in, wondering if the school they thought they knew was hiding something much darker. But before Mia could meet Trevor, something happened that threw everything into chaos. Jasmine, her closest friend and fiercest protector, found an envelope taped to her locker. No return address, no name. Just her first name scrawled across the front in jagged handwriting. Inside wasn't a threat, not directly. It was a photo, grainy and black and white, clearly pulled from a security camera feed. It showed Jasmine in the school library from 2 days ago, standing near the printer, the same day she had overheard Mrs. Crawford and Mr. Bell whispering in the corner. On the back of the photo was a single line typed in bold, "You should have kept your mouth shut." She tried to call Daniel, tried to reach Trevor, but nobody picked up. Her mind spiraled. What if she had walked into something she couldn't walk back out of? What if this wasn't just about some school scandal or dress code hypocrisy? What if she had unknowingly unearthed something bigger, something criminal? Her thoughts jumped from one terrifying possibility to another. Was it a cover-up? Was someone silencing anyone who remembered what happened that summer? She looked out her window and saw the same car she had noticed twice before, parked just far enough away to avoid suspicion, but close enough to keep watch. The windows were tinted. No one got out. But it hadn't moved in over an hour. Panic gave way to paranoia. Was the school in on this? Was someone in her own neighborhood involved? She started to question everyone, teachers, classmates, even friends she'd known since elementary school. Trust cracked like thin ice under her feet. Her mind went back to Mr. Bell's strange behavior, Mrs. Crawford's calculated comments, even Trevor's warning. "You're not the only one they're watching." Maybe he wasn't warning her. Maybe he was trying to scare her off. Maybe he was part of it all. And then, as if the night couldn't grow any darker, her laptop screen blinked back to life, unprompted, as though someone had remotely accessed it. The video she'd closed seconds ago reopened, but now it wasn't just the counselor's office. It was a live feed. Her own webcam. The red light flickered. She reached for the power button, but before she could shut it down, a final message flashed across the screen. "This isn't about your outfit anymore." It never was. Her breath hitched. She ripped the USB from the port and slammed the laptop shut again, backing away from the desk like it had turned into a bomb. The fear was no longer abstract. It wasn't just about threats or clues or even Jasmine disappearing.
It was about control.
Someone had taken control of her privacy, her safety, her mind, and now they were making sure she knew it. The lines between past and present were blurring fast, and whatever had been buried 3 years ago was clawing its way back into the light. Mia knew she had two options: stay silent and be safe, or speak up and risk everything. But either way, time was running out. Just when Mia thought the night couldn't spiral any deeper into madness, her phone rang again. This time from a number she recognized. It was Daniel. Her hands were still trembling, her mind racing, but she managed to answer. "Where have you been?" she demanded, trying to keep her voice from cracking. There was a long pause on the other end, and then Daniel spoke, but something in his voice was off. Slower, careful. "Mia, we need to talk. Not over the phone. Meet me at the library parking lot."
Now.
No explanation.
Just that.
The line went dead before she could ask anything else. Against her better judgment, she grabbed her jacket and raced out the door, her heart pounding so loudly it drowned out her fear. The library was only 10 minutes away, but every streetlight felt like a spotlight. Every passing car felt like a shadow she couldn't escape. When she pulled into the parking lot, Daniel was already there, leaning against the hood of his car, arms crossed and face grim. Mia barely got a word out before he stopped her. "Listen," he said, "I know you found the footage. I know about the messages. But you're looking at it all wrong." She blinked, trying to process what he'd just said. "What do you mean I'm looking at it wrong?" "Someone is threatening me. Jasmine is missing, and—" But Daniel cut her off again, this time lowering his voice. "Jasmine isn't missing." The air around them felt like it had been sucked out of the world. "She's hiding," he said. "She's the one who sent you the drive." Mia's breath caught. "What?
Why?"
Why would she do that?" Daniel hesitated, then unlocked his phone and handed it to her. On the screen was a private message thread between him and Jasmine. The last message from Jasmine read, "Mia needs to know the truth. She was there, too. She just doesn't remember." That sentence struck Mia like a punch to the chest. What did she mean? That she was involved? That she'd done something? "What are you talking about?" Mia whispered, clutching the phone. Daniel looked her straight in the eyes and finally told her what he'd kept hidden for years. "Mia, that summer at camp, it wasn't just you who got questioned. There was a whole group of us. They told us things. Showed us things. They were testing how much we'd remember. Some kids cracked. Most forgot. You," he swallowed hard. "You didn't just witness something. You were part of it. They made you part of it." Her knees buckled slightly.
No.
"No, I don't believe you." But pieces were already falling into place, gaps in her memory, the feeling of unease whenever someone mentioned that summer, how certain moments felt familiar even though she didn't recall them clearly. The USB drive hadn't been just evidence, it was a trigger, a way to wake her up. And the most disturbing part? The people behind it weren't strangers. They weren't outsiders. According to Daniel, they were teachers, trusted mentors, and some of them were still working at the school. Mia's mind spun. All this time she had believed she was the target, the victim of some malicious scheme to shame her for standing out, for challenging authority, for wearing something bold. But in truth, this had nothing to do with school dress codes or social justice. That was just the surface, a smokescreen. Underneath was something darker, a hidden system of manipulation buried within a place meant to protect them. But before she could question further, another car pulled into the lot, its headlights off. Mia's pulse spiked as a figure stepped out, small, quiet, with a hood pulled over her head. Jasmine. Her face was pale, her lips tight with fear, but she nodded toward Mia, like she had expected this moment all along. "I sent the footage," she said softly, "because I thought you deserved to know who you really are, and what they did to us." She stepped closer, holding out a folder. "They erased our memories, Mia. They ran tests, wiped files, scared kids into silence. but I kept everything. And if we don't stop them now, they'll do it again. The folder felt heavy in Mia's hands, not just with papers, but with truth. Birth dates, session logs, names of kids who never returned, teachers with sealed records, financial ties to shady programs disguised as youth development retreats. It wasn't just abuse. It was organized, protected, and funded. And worst of all, one of the names on the page was someone Mia had trusted more than anyone. Mr. Bell. She stared at the name, her stomach twisting into knots. Mr. Bell wasn't just a teacher who criticized her.
He was part of it.
Maybe the leader. And all this time, he'd been watching her, pushing her, waiting for the moment she would snap back into who she used to be. It was never about her outfit. It was about control. About reminding her of a role she was forced to play, and the people who wanted to make sure she'd never remember it. The twist was clear. Mia hadn't just stumbled into a mystery. She had been the mystery all along. Mia sat in her car, gripping the folder so tightly that the corners bent under her fingers, as if damaging the paper could somehow lessen the weight of what it held. But no matter how hard she tried to breathe or blink it away, the truth was written in permanent ink. Mr. Bell, her teacher, her mentor, the man who'd once written her college recommendation letter, was listed not only as a program supervisor, but as a financial contributor to the very institute responsible for the summer retreat. It was never about development. It was about control. Psychological experimentation disguised as personal growth. And now that she was waking up to it, it felt like the walls of her reality were cracking open. When she got home that night, everything seemed wrong. The silence was too thick, the air too still. Her mother was waiting at the kitchen table with a blank expression, her phone in one hand and an unopened letter in the other. "Mia," she said, slowly, carefully, "we need to talk." That alone put Mia on edge, but what her mother said next nearly broke her. Mr. Bell called. He said you've been unstable, that you've been harassing staff and breaking into school files. Her voice trembled. He said you need help. Mia felt her stomach twist. "You believe him?" she asked, barely whispering. Her mother didn't answer right away, but that hesitation was louder than any words. "He said he could make the disciplinary record disappear if you stop whatever this is," her mother added. "But if you don't, you might not graduate." The ultimatum cut through Mia like a blade. Her future, her diploma, her entire life dangled over a pit, and the one person who should have been in her corner was asking her to walk away from the truth to save herself. That night, Mia didn't sleep. She sat on her floor surrounded by evidence, trying to piece it together like a crime scene. She replayed every conversation she'd ever had with Mr. Bell, every weird comment he made, every time he looked at her just a second too long, and suddenly all those moments she brushed off as awkward began to feel sinister. But what made her blood run cold wasn't just his involvement. It was the possibility that someone even closer had known all along. The next morning, she confronted Daniel again. She demanded to know how long he'd been in contact with Jasmine and why he never told her the full story. At first, he deflected. Then he grew angry, defensive. Finally, he blurted it out. He had made a deal. Months ago, Mr. Bell had approached him with a proposition. Keep an eye on Mia, report back if she started remembering anything, and in return, his own record from that summer would be erased permanently. Daniel swore he never thought it would come to this. He claimed he did it to protect her. But to Mia, it felt like the ultimate betrayal. She had trusted him, leaned on him, and now she realized he had been part of her surveillance. As she stormed away, trying to clear her head, she got a message from an unknown number. "You have 1 day to return the folder. No one else has to get hurt." No name, no details, but the implication was clear. They knew she had it. And now someone else was in danger. That someone could be Jasmine, or her mom, or even a student who had nothing to do with any of this. It wasn't just about uncovering the truth anymore. It was about protecting people who didn't even know they were in danger. Later that day, while walking through the school hallway, she caught sight of Mr. Bell. He smiled at her in that same calm, controlled way he always did, but now it felt like a mask, like he was daring her to make a move. That's when she made her choice. Not a safe one. Not a smart one. But the only one her conscience would allow. She walked into his office during lunch, closed the door behind her, and placed the folder on his desk. "I know what you did," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "And I'm not scared of you." He didn't even flinch. Instead, he leaned back in his chair and smiled like he'd been expecting her. "I know you're not," he said calmly. "That's why you're so dangerous." But just before he could speak again, his office phone rang, and this time it was him who froze. He answered quietly, nodding slowly, then hung up and looked at Mia with something she hadn't seen in him before: unease. "It seems you've started something," he murmured. "And now others are watching." For the first time, Mr. Bell looked rattled. Not just by Mia, but by someone else. Someone who had more power than even he expected. And just like that, the tables began to turn again. Mia barely had time to process the shift in Mr. Bell's demeanor before she found herself pulled deeper into something far bigger than just her. That one cryptic phone call cracked the surface of a conspiracy that stretched beyond the school, beyond the summer program, and even beyond her own town. It was no longer about one student being targeted. It was about control, silence, and systematic manipulation of anyone who got too close to the truth. And the deeper she went, the clearer it became that her story wasn't the first, just the most inconvenient. The next morning, Mia received an encrypted message on her school-issued laptop. It wasn't from Jasmine, Daniel, or any known contact. It was from someone calling themselves Seer. The message contained 3 attachments: an old disciplinary report from another school across the state, a voice recording of a young woman arguing with an authority figure, and a redacted government memo marked internal use only. The voice in the recording? It sounded terrifyingly similar to Mia's. But it wasn't her. It was someone else, someone who had once stood exactly where she was now and vanished without a trace. That's when the full picture began to take shape. The retreats weren't isolated. They were part of a covert operation that tested psychological endurance under the guise of leadership development. Participants were chosen based on vulnerability, intelligence, and social influence, young people who could be shaped or silenced. The programs were connected to an educational foundation funded by private donors, political influencers, and corporations looking to test behavioral modification techniques. Mia's win wasn't a fluke. It was an experiment. And now, she had become the control subject who broke protocol by resisting. Shaken and furious, she raced to confront the only person left she hadn't suspected: Principal Wright. He had always seemed too busy to get involved, always conveniently unavailable when trouble arose. But when she barged into his office, something about his body language confirmed what she feared. His face didn't register surprise when she laid out what she knew. In fact, he closed his laptop, stood slowly, and said with eerie calm, "You should have just accepted the award, Mia. That was your way out." She realized then that he wasn't just a passive player, he was actively managing the operation from inside the school. Everything from the scheduling of the assembly to the surveillance of her locker to the erasure of Jasmine's records had been greenlit from this office. But what truly broke her spirit was what he said next. "You think you're the first to fight back? We've dealt with louder, smarter. You'll burn out eventually like the rest." Before she could react, he picked up the phone and called security, not to remove her, but to warn someone else. Someone named Agent Faye. The name sent a chill through Mia's bones, especially because that name matched the signature from the redacted memo she saw earlier. In that instant, she understood the scale wasn't just local or educational, it was federal. Which meant every move she made from this point on would be tracked, documented, and possibly used against her. As she slipped out the side exit of the school, her thoughts were racing. Who could she trust? Daniel had betrayed her. Her mom had been manipulated. Mr. Bell and Principal Wright were complicit. The only person left who might still be out there, Jasmine, had gone silent. But as she scrolled through her old texts, she noticed something strange. One unsent draft in her outbox that she swore she never typed. It read, "Meet me at the observatory. They're watching the wrong person." Whether it was Jasmine or someone else, the message meant only one thing: she wasn't the only one being hunted. And maybe, just maybe, the person behind that message had a bigger plan, one that could finally expose what was really happening behind closed doors. The observatory sat on the edge of town like a forgotten relic from another century, silent, dark, its great domed eye closed to the sky as if mourning some long-lost truth. Mia stood at the bottom of the winding gravel path, staring up at the silhouette of the building, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her teeth. She didn't know what she was walking into. The draft message in her phone could have been a trap, or maybe just another mind game meant to push her further into fear. But something in her gut told her this was the end game, the place where the whole tangled mess of lies and betrayals would finally unravel. She didn't bring a bag, or a folder, or even her phone. Just herself, and the resolve that she wasn't leaving without answers. Inside, the air was thick with dust and quiet dread. Every creak of the old wooden floorboards echoed like footsteps behind her, even though she knew, at least hoped, she was alone. That was until a familiar voice rang out from the shadows near the central telescope, calm and disarming. "You came," it said. Mia turned, fists clenched, to find Jasmine stepping into the pale light of a skylight beam, her face thinner than before, her eyes sharp and hollow. "You really shouldn't have," she added, more gently this time. "They'll be here soon." Mia's voice cracked under the weight of disbelief. "You were alive this whole time.
Why didn't you tell me?"
Jasmine's eyes dropped to the floor. "Because I was trying to protect you. I thought if they believed I was gone, you'd be safe. But when you kept digging, when you got that folder, I realized it was too late. You triggered the final phase." That phrase sent a chill down Mia's spine. What final phase? Jasmine walked to a console buried under years of dust and flipped a switch. Monitors flickered to life, displaying what looked like school blueprints, student data, surveillance camera feeds, live feeds. One of them showed the inside of Mia's house. Another showed her mother pacing nervously by the kitchen window. "This isn't just about you," Jasmine said. "They've been monitoring everyone connected to the program. Every student, every parent, every teacher. The goal wasn't just behavioral research. It was predictive control, using data to train AI models that could forecast social trends, dissent, and leadership potential in teenagers. You were a perfect anomaly. They couldn't predict you." Mia staggered back. "So they tried to erase me?" Jasmine nodded. "They've done it before. Quiet expulsions, sudden relocations, fabricated breakdowns.
But you fought back.
You were too public, too vocal. So they accelerated the process." She looked down again. "And now, if we don't stop it tonight, they're going to bury all of this, permanently." Mia felt her stomach twist, but before she could respond, the door burst open behind her. A floodlight blinded her, followed by the sharp click of boots against the stone floor. "Step away from the monitors," barked a voice she recognized instantly. Agent Faye. The name from the memo. The woman who Mr. Bell had called. Tall, severe, wearing a suit without insignia but a badge that shimmered with silent authority. She didn't aim a gun, but the threat in her voice was colder than steel. "This isn't your story to tell, Mia. You're not the hero here." Mia stood frozen, her mind racing for options. "You can't shut me up," she said, her voice trembling but defiant. "This whole thing is illegal, morally bankrupt. You've been experimenting on kids." Agent Faye didn't flinch. "And yet here you are.
Alive.
Educated. Strong.
We didn't destroy you, Mia.
We made you better." The way she said it made something snap inside Mia. That's when Jasmine lunged, not at Agent Faye, but at the console. With one swift movement, she yanked the hard drive from the monitoring system and threw it to Mia. "Run," she shouted. But it wasn't a dramatic movie escape. There was no back door to flee through. No fast car waiting. Instead, Agent Faye calmly stepped forward, drawing a taser. "Give it back, or I'll make you watch her suffer." Mia held the drive in her hands like it was made of fire. Everything she had worked for, every truth buried beneath layers of manipulation, now sat in her palms. And that's when the real twist came. From behind Agent Faye, a new voice echoed, deep, calm, and far too familiar. "Enough. Mr. Bell stepped through the entrance, not in a panic, but with quiet control.
Faye, stand down, he said.
We're changing course. Faye stared at him. You don't give me orders. But Mr. Bell simply smiled. I do now. What neither of them had expected, what Mia hadn't even considered, was that Mr. Bell had been recording everything, quietly, methodically, collecting leverage of his own. He had files on Faye, on Wright, on the donors, on the shadow ops. And now, with the system compromised and the data extracted, he was making a power play. Mia realized then that she hadn't been the target. She was the fuse, the firebrand, the unpredictable spark Mr. Bell had needed to set the whole thing ablaze from within. She turned to him in horror. You used me. He gave her a sad smile. You were never supposed to survive the program. But you did. And you proved to me they're the real threat. Before she could say another word, Agent Faye reached for her side holster. But the lights cut out. Total blackness. And in the chaos, someone grabbed Mia's arm, dragging her down a back corridor. Jasmine's voice whispered in her ear. Now we run. And as they disappeared into the woods beyond the observatory, the building behind them lit up in emergency red, alarms blaring into the night, and Mia knew this wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something much bigger than herself. But for the first time, she wasn't running scared. She was running toward the truth. The forest didn't offer answers, just space. Endless space to breathe, to run, to feel the weight of everything come crashing down without the threat of cameras or silence-shrouded authority figures watching from the shadows. Mia and Jasmine didn't speak for hours. They kept moving, letting the woods swallow the sound of their footsteps, while the distant wail of sirens from the observatory faded into memory. By the time they reached the edge of the next town, dawn was just breaking, and the sky looked like it had been bruised by everything they'd survived. It wasn't freedom, not yet, but it was the first real step toward it. They found an old gas station with a flickering, open 24 hours sign and collapsed inside a corner booth of the attached diner. The waitress gave them one look, offered them coffee without a word, and disappeared back behind the counter, like she knew better than to ask. Mia stared at the hard drive still clutched in her hand like a lifeline.
She didn't know what to do with it now. Expose it? Bury it?
Upload it to the internet and risk it all going viral, or worse, being erased before anyone could understand what it meant? Jasmine was scrolling through a burner phone she'd kept hidden, checking for signals, back channels, anything that hadn't been compromised yet. We're not the only ones, she finally whispered. Other students are reaching out. People who saw the live feed. Someone mirrored the drive to a secure server before the system shut down. It's spreading. The relief that washed over Mia didn't feel clean. It was tangled with fear, grief, and the exhaustion of knowing that justice, if it ever came, would be messy, slow, and likely incomplete. Still, word traveled fast in the age of trending hashtags and TikTok exposés. Within days, social media exploded with clips from the surveillance footage. The phrase behavioral AI school scandal started trending on YouTube, then moved to Twitter, then national news. Interviews popped up with whistleblowers, teachers who quit in silence, now coming forward with stories that echoed Mia's. Parents began demanding answers. Lawsuits were filed. The district board dissolved. Names were redacted from government documents and then mysteriously leaked online, one by one. Some of the worst offenders disappeared from public life altogether, resigned, relocated, or removed. And still, the deeper truths remained buried beneath red tape, legal jargon, and the cold machinery of institutions built to outlast outrage. Mia didn't go home. Not right away. Her mother's voice cracked over the phone when they finally spoke, but she understood. She told Mia she was proud, that she was safe now, that no matter what the headlines said, her daughter had done something no one else had the courage to do. Jasmine left for a remote safe house, where a few former students had begun building something like a resistance, not violent, not radical, just focused. Organized. A watchdog network to track future violations, expose hidden trials, and protect kids who couldn't protect themselves. Mia wasn't ready to join them, not yet. She needed space. Needed silence. She stayed in a small mountain town with an aunt she barely remembered, walking trails in the morning and watching the sun bleed into the horizon every night, wondering what life might feel like when you're not constantly looking over your shoulder. The final twist came quietly, with no drama, just a letter in her mailbox, handwritten on thick parchment and signed. Inside was a photo. It showed her standing in the school auditorium during the award ceremony, the medal around her neck, her chin lifted just slightly higher than usual. In the background, barely visible in the shadows near the exit, stood Mr. Bell, watching her, even then. Behind the photo was a single sentence. It was never just about you. It was about who would believe you. Mia held the letter for a long time, unsure if it was a threat, a warning, or something else entirely. But whatever it meant, she finally understood what she had become. A symbol, not a savior. A story others would pass down, repeat, twist, and maybe forget. But for those who needed it most, the kids still stuck in silence, still afraid to speak, still dismissed for being different. Her voice had been the spark. And now there was no putting that fire out. Some mysteries never get solved. Some wounds don't heal the way you hope. But the truth, when it finally surfaces, changes everything. It doesn't bring peace. Not always. But it brings clarity. And for Mia, that was enough.
For now.